All right, welcome back. Today, we're digging into a fundamental conflict that's really at the heart of our economy. I mean, it affects pretty much every job, every contract, and every single time you hire someone to do something for you. We're going to be diving into Stephen Ross's groundbreaking 1973 paper that really defined what we now call the principal agent problem. So, at its core, it all comes down to a really simple question, one that I guarantee you faced. Let's say you're a boss, or a client, or you're just hiring a contractor to fix your roof. You want a great result, right? Of course. But here's the thing. You can't watch their every move. So, how do you make sure they're actually doing their best work? Well, this is the exact puzzle that Stephen Ross set out to solve. Ross started by giving this puzzle a formal name, the agency relationship. And it's a really simple, but you'll see incredibly powerful idea. You've got one person, the principal, who hires another person, the agent, to do a job on their behalf. Seems totally straightforward, but it's actually packed with all sorts of hidden conflicts. And believe me, this relationship is absolutely everywhere you look. The classic example, of course, is the employer and the employee. But think about it. It's also the shareholders of a company. They're the principals. And the CEO they hire to run the place, that's the agent. It's the same deal with a lawyer and their client, or you and that contractor we were just talking about. This is a basic building block of our entire economy. Okay, and here is where the problem really kicks in. The principal and the agent, well, they just have different goals. The principal, who's footing the bill, wants to maximize their profit or their payoff, and that usually means the agent needs to work as hard as possible. But the agent, they want to maximize their own well-being. And sure, that includes getting paid, but it also includes things like, leisure time and trying to avoid a bunch of unnecessary stress or risk. This misalignment, it's the engine that drives this entire problem. And this whole conflict really only exists because of something economists call imperfect information. Just think about it for a second. If the principal could perfectly see every single thing the agent did, they could just pay for specific actions. Problem solved. But they can't. In the real world, all they usually see is the final outcome. And that big gap between the effort and the result, well, that creates this massive gray area. And this slide just perfectly illustrates why that gray area is so incredibly tricky. See, the final payoff, the result, isn't just about how much effort the agent puts in. It's a mix of their actions and something Ross called the state of nature, which is basically just a fancy term for random luck. You could have a farmer who works unbelievably hard, but a sudden drought just ruins the entire harvest. Or a CEO who makes all the right moves, but then a surprise recession tanks the company's profits. Which leads us to the principal's ultimate dilemma. When you're staring at a bad outcome, how in the world do you know what caused it? Did your employees slack off, what economists call shirking, or did they work their tail off and just get hit with some really bad luck? The truth is, without that perfect information, you can never be 100% sure. So, this is the challenge Ross took on. His paper is basically a quest to find the holy grail, the optimal fee schedule. That's the perfect payment contract that could somehow solve this whole dilemma, one that motivates the agent to do the right thing even when nobody's watching. Now, to really get the solution, let's start with the two simplest kinds of contracts you could offer. First up, a flat salary. For the agent, this is great, zero risk. But for the principal, it provides almost zero incentive for the agent to go that extra mile. Then you have the other extreme, pure commission. This creates a huge incentive to succeed, for sure, but it also forces the agent to carry all the risk of any bad luck. As you can see, neither one of these is really the perfect answer. And right there, that reveals the central insight of Ross's entire paper. There's no magic bullet here. Every single contract, every fee schedule is really just navigating a fundamental trade-off. A trade-off between giving the agent an incentive and figuring out who holds all the risk. Yeah, you can almost picture it like a balancing act. The perfect contract isn't about just getting rid of risk or just maxing out the incentive. No, it's about finding that sweet spot. It's about finding the absolute best balance between motivating the agent to work hard while also insuring them against those random risks that are totally outside their control. This led Ross to a pretty profound conclusion. The best solution you can find is almost never perfect in that textbook economic sense. He proved that it won't be what economists call Pareto-efficient, which just means a situation where you can't make anyone better off without making someone else worse off. To put it really simply, because the principal has to dangle these incentives to get the agent motivated, the final deal for sharing risk is always going to be a compromise. It's a second best kind of world. Okay, now I know this equation looks a little complicated, but trust me, the idea behind it is pretty straightforward. This formula basically shows the ideal, perfect state of risk sharing, where the value of one extra dollar is balanced perfectly between the principal and the agent. Ross's big breakthrough was showing, with math, how the need for motivation forces you to break this perfect balance. You actually have to distort the contract away from this ideal just to make sure the agent tries hard. It's the mathematical proof of that trade-off we've been talking about. So, why does a 50-year-old theory like this still matter so much today? Well, because it didn't just stay in some dusty textbook. This entire framework gave us a new lens, a new way to understand and design countless economic relationships out in the real world. And once you know what to look for, you start to see this framework everywhere. I mean, why do CEOs get these incredibly complex bonus and stock option packages? It's a contract designed to align their incentives as the agent with the shareholders' goals. Why do you have a deductible on your car insurance? Well, it forces you, the agent, to share some of the risk, so you have an incentive not to be reckless. This theory even helps explain why firms exist in the first place. They're basically just structures built to monitor employees and solve that shirking problem at scale. When it's all said and done, by putting a formal name and structure to this problem, Stephen Ross provided a cornerstone for entire fields of modern economics. Things like corporate finance, contract theory, organizational behavior. They all build directly on this powerful foundation of misaligned incentives and imperfect information. And that kind of leaves us with a final thought for you. This isn't just some abstract theory, it's a mental model you can use. So the next time you see a weird payment scheme or a strange clause in a contract, or even just wonder why you get paid the way you do, ask yourself, what incentive is this trying to create and what risk is it trying to share? You might just find the principal agent problem hiding right there in plain sight.